The United States' chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan is back at the center of the election and probably tonight's debate as well. In moments, top Republicans will present the Congressional Gold Medal to the families of the 13 service members killed in Afghanistan as that war was winding down. House Republicans have released a years-in-the-making report that blames the Biden administration for the operation's failure. We should note that while the withdrawal did happen on President Biden's watch, former President Donald Trump did make the deal and set a deadline with the Taliban. Joining me now to talk about this is Republican Congressman Mike Waltz of Florida. He sits on the Intelligence and Foreign Affairs Committees, also served in Afghanistan. Coming up, I'll be talking to Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts. But let me go to you first, Congressman Waltz. The State Department is saying, the Biden administration is saying that this House Republican report on the Afghanistan withdrawal, quote, and we put this up on screen, issued partisan statements, cherry-picked facts, and withheld testimonies from the American people. Your response to that?
Yeah, they're saying it's politicized and questioning the timing. I would point out that Democrats were in charge of the House of Representatives for all of 2021, all of 2022, no investigation, no interviews, barely even any hearings. They had one. So what was politicized, I think, was basically trying to sweep this thing under the rug. This was worse than Saigon in many ways, because there wasn't necessarily an expectation that the Viet Cong were going to attack the homeland. Al-Qaeda is back, ISIS is back, Americans were abandoned, and I would hope that we would just seek for lessons learned and get to the bottom of what happened. What the report shows, and these are from State Department interviews, DOD interviews, this is in their own words, that the generals repeatedly, 3 4-star generals, advised Biden not to do it this way. Yes, President Trump entered a deal, but it was a conditional deal, and at the end of the day, what the Democrats are ignoring is that he left Bagram Air Base, he left 2,500 troops, he left NATO in place, he left our contractors because the Taliban didn't live up to 6 of the 7 conditions of the deal. And then it was how the withdrawal was done. You pull out your assets, your embassy, your allies before your military, not the other way around. So and for the families, they just want someone. Kamala Harris, who was the last in the room, was she either a wallflower and had no part in this major decision, or was she at the table? They just want someone from this administration to say, we did a lot of things wrong. Here's accountability. Here's transparency. We've learned our lessons that this will never happen again. But they've gotten nothing, not a call, not a meeting, zero from Biden or Harris, which is a real disservice to them.
And perhaps we'll hear more on that tonight. Perhaps it will come up tonight. But this, I mean, do you fault former President Donald Trump for entering in this deal with the Taliban? I mean, if
no more than I fault President Bush, who negotiated with the Taliban, President Obama, who negotiated with the Taliban. Actually, if you remember Bo Bergdahl and that trade, that was a confidence-building measure in negotiations with the Obama administration and the Taliban. Where I applaud President Trump is where he said, hey, deal's off, Taliban haven't lived up to 6 of the 7 conditions.
And I do want to ask you about this Congressional Gold Medal ceremony that's occurring. It's going to happen before this presidential debate. Last month, I'm sure you saw this, the Trump campaign may have broken federal law by using Arlington National Cemetery for political purposes. That was when the former president was there to honor family members of those fallen soldiers at Abbey Gate. Yep. Are you concerned at all about the Trump campaign playing politics with Arlington National Cemetery?
You know, Jim, I was there. Those families had that ceremony completely set up with Arlington and then invited both President Trump and Kamala Harris, who was in Washington that day. She chose not to come. He chose to be there for them. We were down there at Section 60. You could have heard a pin drop. By the way,
but should they have been
I saw no conflagration. I've taken photos every time I visited.
But should they
we post them online.
But should they have had Trump campaign staff coming over to Section 60 to take pictures and so on?
We were all taking pictures with our phones. All of us were the families were taking pictures, their relatives, his staff, me, all of us.
You shouldn't use
because
Arlington.
I've never heard, this is a made-up rule that you don't take photos in Section 60. Every veteran knows you do it. And by the way, if you're going to enforce,
as a campaign
but if you're going to enforce
right?
this, then you don't selectively enforce it on President Trump. President Biden has done it. John McCain did it. Harris has done it in all kinds of federal cemeteries. But suddenly we're going to selectively try to make a distinction between his official role as former president and whether he's in a campaign by some bureaucrat at Arlington National Cemetery.
But if the cemetery personnel tell you these are the rules, shouldn't you follow them?
Well, if the rules are evenly applied, right? Have they been evenly applied? I mean, you also have precedent. Joe Biden just did a campaign ad hitting Trump in June from a military cemetery in Europe. Where was your outrage, the media's outrage, or anyone's outrage? He ran a campaign ad in June from a military cemetery hitting President Trump for the made-up suckers and losers comment. No one said a word.
You think that's
now they are.
Let me ask you about this. Trump also said that the Presidential Medal
well,
of Freedom...
in that regard, no. I mean, I believe the 26 people who are around President Trump...
You don't believe John Kelly, the chief of staff?
Well, I believe the 26. I mean, you have 26 people
General Milley
versus one.
said he made similar comments. Let me ask you about this. Trump also said that the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is awarded to civilians, is, quote, much better than the Medal of Honor, which is awarded to service members. Did you take issue with that?
Well, look, I think it was taken out of context in the sense he was saying this award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, you aren't literally have your limbs blown off or died for, and certainly that's better than those who go through that kind of pain and anguish with the Medal of Honor. And I think the campaign's clarified that.
You don't think that was a mistake on his part?
Well, I think they've clarified, the context with which he said it, in that you don't have to die or lose limbs to get this one as you do for the Medal of Honor.
And I think we can all agree on that the sacrifices made by our service members should be honored.
I hope we would agree that there should be accountability. Not a single person has been fired for the worst military debacle in the Afghanistan withdrawal in our history, I would argue, in our history. And when we have future attacks and Americans have to go back and clean up that mess, that it goes back to responsibility for the Biden administration. When he says it's an outstanding success, that signals to the family and veterans that there's nothing to be learned here, and that's a real disservice.
Well, we do need to learn more. Congressman Waltz, thanks very much for your time. We appreciate